In the commercial world of photography right now, regardless of what niche you're in, you're probably finding that budgets are being tightened across the board. The competition for pitches has become fiercer and more challenging than it's ever been before, and clients are continually expecting more and more deliverables and more output for less and less money. So my big question at the moment is, how can we stand out in this environment, and how can we continue to thrive in this environment? My main piece of advice for you today is to be more resourceful. Get accustomed to simplifying your setups. You'll be amazed what you can achieve when you're forced to get creative with your immediate environment and forced to use simply what is in front of you. So in order to do that, I'm going to show you how I created these images in one day using one continuous light, using only what was available to me and absolutely no pre-planning whatsoever. So to give you a bit of background on this shoot and why I did it, over Christmas I decided to set myself a little challenge where I had only one day to create a mini fashion series using only what was available around the house. And of course, what was in my usual camera bag, which I tend to carry around with me wherever I go, because you never know when the inspiration is going to strike. Now, it's party season at this point, and I tend to travel around Scotland quite a bit over this period, visiting old friends, going to dinner parties, things like that. So I preemptively looked in my wardrobe and I picked a few bits and pieces that I thought I could have some fun with. So when it came down to deciding what style of imagery it was that I wanted to shoot, I started to think about what it is that's inspiring me at the moment. And right now I've really gotten back into the sort of dark, sexy, moody, almost fetish-esque style imagery and styling. Now, I'm up against the clock, of course. I've only given myself one day to do this. I've done no pre-planning, so I don't really know what it is I'm going to be walking into, and I'm going to be kind of making it up as I go along. So I know I need to keep this as simple and as uncomplicated as possible. And in order to do that, I decided to keep my focus on accessories only. So I know that I've already got a few gorgeous pairs of stilettos, some fun sort of socks and tights and sort of things like that that I can work with. And I really want to add a human element into this because I've had a few briefs recently where it's been a focus on product more than anything, but there's always been the addition of a body in it. Typically, a lot of the briefs that I've had come through have been more drinks and cocktail focused, which means obviously more hands have been in the shot. But my hands are not really designed for photography, unfortunately. My nail beds are pretty horrible and I have really tiny hands, so it doesn't really work well for that. So I thought, well, I don't really want to use my face. I'm not going to use full body because I want to keep it as I said, as simple and as uncomplicated as possible. So focusing on accessories. So I thought, well, I've got shoes, I've got tights, legs it is. I get to my parents' house shortly before Christmas and I have a quick look around. So I do a little scout of the area to see what scenes, what areas of the house I can use as a backdrop, what props there might be available that I can use to fill in the set a little bit. And I then look at my own personal wardrobe and the sort of things that I brought with me, and I try and figure out a plan for shot one. Now, shot one is the image that you can see on my screen here. The first thing that I decided to do was see if there was a part of the house that I could use that sort of plays with the light a little bit. So I only have one light at this point. It's the Redhead, the old 15-year-old Redhead that my dad gave me a long time ago. I spoke about it in a previous video. I love that light so much. It's so uncomplicated. It's beautiful, and continuous light for me is just preferable, particularly when I'm doing still life. Now, I was lucky in that I had a second pair of hands and a second pair of eyes with me, which was really helpful because it doesn't have to be someone that knows how to operate cameras and lighting and, you know, works in the industry. It could really be anyone. Obviously, I know my parents' house very well, and sometimes it's nice to have someone that hasn't been there before that can kind of see the room and the space in a different way, in a way that you haven't, in a way that will allow you to be creative and, you know, create scenes that perhaps you wouldn't have considered. So when we had a little scout around the house together, we went upstairs into one of the bedrooms, and the walk-in wardrobe has these lovely kind of shutter style doors. And we saw that and we thought that's a really kind of interesting prop that we can use to pour the light through, because we could get some really nice light effects from there. And the carpet is a kind of neutral blue. But with a grade, we kind of decided to bring out that blue and really enhance it, because we felt that the kind of style that I was going for was that kind of really saturated, slightly vintage, sexy, as I say, fetish-esque style imagery. So we decided to kind of really bring out the saturation of the carpet and all the sort of main elements of the shot. So we've got a starting point now. We found a suitable backdrop that we can work with. So I'm thinking, what are the color schemes that I'm going to have in my scene? It's going to be this sort of light blue carpet that I'm probably going to rich and deepen and saturate more in post. And I've got this kind of warm, rich brown shutter door background. So I look at what I've got, and I've got these gorgeous stiletto toe patent red heels with this lovely kind of unusually shaped gold heel that's really, really reflective, really shiny. And I know that's going to catch well with the Redhead that we've got. And I've got these lovely sort of dainty lace white ankle socks. So I know that that's going to be my starting point, but I don't really know where it's going to go from there. The best thing that I find in these occasions is to just start taking some shots and see what we're getting and kind of build and move from there. I get everything on my feet, I go upstairs, we get a light sitting directly behind the shutter door, turn it on, and we start moving it around and seeing how it kind of adjusting the reflections that's happening in front of the scene. What we also did with that Redhead is we really closed in those barn doors on both sides. So we had a tiny, tiny pin of light that was coming through. Those Redheads are super bright, and we really wanted to avoid as much spill and as much kind of overflow as possible so that we could maintain that really dark feel. And of course, we didn't have much space to work with. We didn't have a big studio, so it was pretty close to me, and we really had to shape it and kind of find ways of making it work and minimizing that spill, just again with what we had around us. It takes a little bit of time to figure out what the composition is going to be. How much do we want to see? How much do we want in shadow? How much do we want popping through? It really is a lot of trial and error at this point, bearing in mind that it's a little bit trickier because I'm the subject as well as the director, as well as the set stylist and all of those sort of things. Luckily, we've got the laptop set up, and luckily my dad had a spare cable available that we could use to tether, because that just wasn't even something that occurred to me, unfortunately. But we were very lucky in that we had that, because it would have been super tricky to try and see what it was I was capturing whilst being in front of the camera. And although I had George with me helping, it still would have been quite complicated. The one thing I really do wish I had, though, was a shutter release, which is annoying, but never mind. We made it work because it's all about being resourceful with what you have. So we had Capture One set up on live view so that I could see exactly what it was I was doing while I was doing it, which really, really helped. And after a lot of playing around, I was still kind of trying to figure it out, but I was definitely getting somewhere. I decided to sit down to take a break. As I sat down in just the kind of normal way that I would sit, and I was kind of leant over, and we both looked at the live view at the moment I did that, and we were like, that looks good, that looks cool. It looks kind of relaxed, but it gives the right sort of body language. So we took off a shot, started to move the light around until we felt like it was in the right position. Then we decided, yeah, okay, I think this is where we want to go with this. This is the right composition. This is the right body language. And then as I started to look at the shot, I thought it feels a little bit empty. What else can we do to kind of fill up the scene a little bit without over cluttering it? And I thought, right, makeup bag. So went into my makeup bag, took out a few things that weren't too heavily branded and weren't too heavily used. And I just kind of picked out the sort of nice shinier elements and kind of just dropped it on the floor so that it felt like it was more or less naturally placed there as opposed to positioned. And then everything kind of landed quite nicely, and then I just kind of adjusted it from there. And then I felt it's not quite finished. You know, when you get a sense when you think it's so nearly there, but it's just not quite finished yet. And then I remembered the thing that got me into fashion in the first place was my mum's old 1970s Vogues, and I thought, I wonder if she still has them. So I go downstairs, I asked my mum, have you still got those 70s Vogues? And she was like, absolutely, they're in your room. So I went into my room, took them all out there and then, decided these have got to be featured. These are so cool. All the front covers are amazing. And the thing that really took me was the price on the front, 65p, 75p. Those were the days. Anyway, I had a look through them all and I thought, which cover is going to work well with this? And I absolutely loved the bright red cover. It had no image on it, it just had some writing on it. It kind of looked like a detective file or something, and I just felt like it was really suitable for the style of lighting that we had and the theme that we had going on. And also it was a very red theme that we had going on, and it went well with the blue carpet, so I kind of just dropped it in the scene. And I loved the way it just kind of brushed the back of the walk-in wardrobe. Took off some shots and we thought, yep, happy with this is great, this is where we want to go. We just needed one more way of filling the light a little bit. We had our key light, which was the Redhead behind that shutter door, but there were just elements of my feet and my legs that we really wanted to fill. Now, we could have just moved the light around and done multiple exposures and then done one big comp, but to move the Redhead around constantly while it's on as well is not a good idea, and while it's set up you really want to just leave it there just for safety reasons. So I spoke to my dad and I said, if you've got anything that's like a light, so even if it's like a small like LED or one of those small little aperture continuous lights, if you got, or even just a head torch, just anything, have you got anything that I can use to just fill in different elements of the shot that we could use as a comp later? Something handheld, preferably something small, because we were working in a very small tight space. And luckily he did have something. It's a Colbor 100 and you can see it here, and I'll also put a little picture up of it in the corner so you can see what it is. It was a great, really powerful light, and you can operate it via your phone on an app. It can be turned into any different color temperature. It's brilliant little light. And we just had the softbox attachment with a sort of miniature honeycomb grid, and had the camera on a tripod, and George just went round different parts of my legs with this tiny little LED light, and every time we went round I'd press the shutter. Now, obviously this was a little bit convoluted and time consuming because I was the one in the scene. I really couldn't move because we were doing multiple exposures, and George was moving around my legs with the light. So the only way we could fire the shutter was to set a timer for 10 seconds each time, which took ages and was really time consuming and annoying, but it was all worth it in the end because it meant that we had so many options with what we wanted to bring out into the light, what we wanted to enhance, and what we wanted to push into the shadows. It was a really awkward little setup that we had. We were on the landing, which kind of goes into the bathroom and then into the bedroom, which was right in the doorways where we were shooting. So we had the laptop sort of set up on the toilet, which was tethered to the camera, which was on a tripod right on the edge of the landing, just kind of poking through into the bedroom door. The behind the scenes is always less glamorous than the real thing, but that's fine. We're being resourceful. That was setup number one. Number two, where are we going to go next? So number two took ages to figure out. I think I tried on multiple pairs of heels and sock combinations before we finally ended up with this shot, which is definitely my favorite. I love this. I love the simplicity of it. So setup number two, I went back upstairs because I felt like we had quite a lot of cool stuff to work with in that room. There was this beautiful sort of white French, slightly ornate style chair up there, and I thought this would be a great prop to work with. And I decided to use, at the time, these sort of burgundy big 70s style platform shoes with these pale blue leg warmers. We played around with lots of different things up there, loads of different angles, different shots, different backgrounds, so many different things, and nothing was working, and I knew that it wasn't working. But there was something there, there was something coming from me, I just hadn't figured it out yet. So rather than continuing to try and force something to work, I decided I'm just going to completely change the whole vibe of this. So I changed into these fire engine red stilettos with the same colour and tone of fishnet tights, and I thought, let's just go all the way, let's just go all fetish style. So we went back upstairs, and again we tried lots of different angles around that chair, using it as a way to position my legs essentially, rather than using it as part of the scene. So I tried sort of sitting on it in different ways, moving the chair around. We tried sort of wide angle, we tried from above, from below, closer in, and then initially I had my legs kind of crossed over because when we shot the previous shoes that weren't working, we quite liked that angle. And then I had to move my legs because they were kind of being squashed and they were getting really, really sore. So I moved them into a more comfortable position like I did with the first shot, and I saw what was coming up on the live view, and immediately I was like, that's the one. So we shot that, we liked that angle. George went really, really wide, really, really close, which is how you're getting that really dramatic sort of view of my legs. And he kind of perfected the light, pointed it almost directly side on to my legs. We can kind of see how that effect is taking place in the final shot. With this shot and the previous shot, we closed in those barn doors and we really narrowed that light. So it was super, super, super closed, both ends, and it was just a tiny, tiny strip of light that was coming through, because obviously cannot control the output of that light. It is on or it is off. It's really, really bright or there's nothing there. So you really have to control it with those barn doors. So I'm looking at the shot as it's coming through. I'm really happy with it. I think it's great. I think the angle's great. We just nailed it in one. It was one of those things where it just all came together and it all made sense. But again, I thought it's not quite finished. There's something missing. And realizing that I'm doing a sort of series here is there needs to be some form of continuity. And I thought, let's get that Vogue back. So had another look through the Vogues that I took from my bedroom downstairs and saw this other front cover that had the face sort of, or the eyes covered. And in terms of the color scheme, the red and the blue, again, it was perfect. And I couldn't really move from where I was on this chair. So I got George to bring me the magazine. And while I was kind of sitting in this really awkward position, I just dropped it in front of me and it didn't need moving or adjusting. It was perfect. Took a shot and we were like, it's done. We didn't use any additional light. We didn't use any additional fill. We did play around with some extra fill with that little LED light again, but when it came down to it, we thought it's perfect the way it is. Don't need to play around with it anymore. When you know it's done, move on. So that's what we did. Now, shot number 3. We started off in the kitchen because we thought, can we do something with the big cooker that's in there? You know, when you go into a location and you're doing a scout around, you're thinking, there's something here, but I'm just not sure what it is yet. And it was one of those occasions. So we thought, let's just bring the camera in. Let's figure out what it is that I'm going to have on my feet, and then we'll just have a play around and just see what composition's working. So we're downstairs now, and while we're trying to figure out the composition and the setup of this shot, I go out of the kitchen and through into the bedroom to get the Redhead light, because that's where we left it. As I went through there, George looked through the door of the kitchen, which has these slightly warped glass panels all through it. And as he was looking through those panels, the door that was into the bedroom, which was where I was ever so slightly open. And there was this lovely strip of light that was coming out of it. We thought that could work really, really well. We've got the sort of continuity of the beam of light and the darkness around, and we've got a little bit of interest created from the warped glass, which is going to kind of create sort of fractures in the image. We decided, let's just set the camera up here and let's shoot through that glass panel into the sort of landing area that was between the kitchen and the bedroom. So we turned the main bedroom light off, which was creating that strip, and we replaced it with the Redhead. So I put on the heels in the fishnets, and to begin with, I just stood in that beam of light, just focusing on the lower part of my legs and just had a little play around with that. While we were shooting, my parents have one of those hue bulbs, which is this guy back here. Can you see it? That one. And it was on set to like a rich red at the time, and it was just off in the background. And we really liked the sort of color bleed that we were getting from that. And we knew that we needed a kind of addition of color in that, because at the moment we've just got black stilettos and black fishnets and not much more color going on there. And in the other images, there was a lot of pops of color. So we thought, okay, that's really cool. So we turned off the hue, brought in the LED light, which we know we can control into different colors using the app. So we started with the same red that was on that hue because we really liked it, and we just moved it around the scene until we felt like it was shining on the best parts of the shoe or the leg or whatever it is, that whatever effect it was that we liked. And then the next part, the hard part, was of course, what's the composition going to be? What position are my legs going to be in? What body language do we want to use here? So I moved around loads and loads in the scene. I tried standing up in lots of different ways. I tried sitting down in lots of different ways. And then eventually I just started to lie down and I just sort of moved myself around in a 360 angle and moved my legs until I felt like something was starting to make sense. And once we found that position, it was just a case of perfecting and shaping that light. So we were very happy with the light that kind of accidentally presented itself through the door with the Redhead. Again, the barn doors were closed right down, just like we had with all the other setups. And we were pretty happy with where we had the color LED. We liked kind of how that was coming through and how it was breaking up in that warped glass that we were shooting through. And the final part was to really bring that continuity together again. So I think the theme here is 70s Vogue. So I went back to the collection that my mum had, found this lovely front cover that I absolutely adored. It was really beautiful. It was subtle. It wasn't too in your face, and it was something that we could kind of just have as part of the set that wasn't going to be too overpowering in terms of color and the sort of subject on the front. Then I thought glass of Prosecco. There was Prosecco in its abundance. Of course, it was Christmas time, so we brought a glass in just to add a little bit of something to sort of balance out the shiny elements that we had there. As we were shooting this entire series, we were grading as we went. We were adjusting the colors and trying to figure out the overall feel and grade that we wanted with all these images, so that when it came to the next shot, we could try and match it and we could try and make it all feel like it's a cohesive set. It was only 3 images, but it was really important that they didn't feel like 3 images from 3 completely different shoots. We really wanted it to feel like it was from one set, and that it all made some kind of sense and there was some kind of story there. I have to say, it was a really fun shoot. It was one of those days where we just played, and being forced to get creative in that way and figure out how can you make something beautiful and to the standard of the rest of your portfolio with such limited options and only with what is around you. And the sort of challenge of doing that in itself is so much fun and really rewarding as well. And I've been really happy with not just the results, but also the feedback that I've had from people. It's been really nice to see that they've been well received and that they've had the impact that was desired. I didn't put any pressure on myself to create anything groundbreaking or game-changing or anything like that. Obviously, I always set my standards high and I always kind of want to create the best work I can every time I try. So I do put a lot of effort in regardless of what it is I'm doing. But, you know, it was Christmas time as well and I just wanted to have fun. I just wanted to play and make the most of what was already at my disposal. Now is a really great time to just play, take the pressure off, see what you've got around you. What can you use to make something fun or exciting, or maybe bring out a part of your creative personality that you hadn't discovered yet. I challenge you to get creative with what is in your immediate environment. I promise you it's challenging, but it's really good fun and it just takes the pressure off what would be a normal day's shoot. And of course, please let me know how you get on. I would love to see the results of whatever it is you end up shooting if you do take this challenge on this month.